Spoilers and offensive content to come.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Carlos.
We are Two Fat Guys Talk. We are a podcast where we talk about things that interest us, usually video games. And this is episode 124 of that podcast. And we have a full docket of interesting topics to talk about today. Dave has created a very professional-looking list. It involves a Windows notepad scrawl of hastily typed-up topics. And we're going to go through them in order. Devan, you'll present the first topic.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing going through everybody's mind right now, at least as far as, well, video games is concerned, is Microsoft bought ZeniMax, which meant they bought Bethesda. And what is this going to mean for the future of everything from Doom to Wolfenstein to Arcane Studios, as far as exclusivity, and those studios' possible fates? My early take on this is, oh, thank God. Because ZeniMax sucked as a parent company. And Bethesda just kind of sucks as its own company. I mean, don't get me wrong, as far as the publishing arm of it, I don't really care. They have published some fantastic games, like the Doom remakes, or I guess Doom relaunch would be concerned. The Wolfenstein series, all the different Arcane games, they're all good. And the games that Bethesda themselves make are not. They have no quality assurance at all.
Or they do, and the quality assurance is overworked and not given enough time, which is probably more likely.
And that is entirely possible. Let's blame the company and not the employees. Mm-hmm. Bethesda does not put enough effort into their first party games.
Yeah, let's blame the management and the actual developers.
Like, let's blame Todd Howard.
Todd Coward? I'm fond of Matt McMuscle's name for him, of Todd Coward.
Honestly, I've been thinking about making a meme picture since Microsoft bought Bethesda. And it's basically a picture of him with his catchphrase, "It just works," and a giant "You're fired" button with Microsoft's fist slamming down on it. Because if that button just worked and he was asked to move on, I would cheer. Because as the face of Bethesda's Fallout series, it's very punchable.
Do you think Todd Howard prefers missionary or doggy style?
Well, he's been fucking the fans for years, so I'm guessing probably doggy style.
And what about you, Dave?
Anyway, I can only see this buyout as being good for Bethesda. It means that Microsoft... Now, as far as the acquisitions that Microsoft has done over the past 4 or 5 years, they have kept very hands-off. Their mission, unlike in the early 2000s, were not to buy a studio and then to make them build what Microsoft at the time wanted. We saw so many studios get hired for projects or got bought out by Microsoft and then shuttered because it didn't match what the Microsoft execs wanted at the time. Look at what happened with Scalebound, for example. They had a playable game there, and Platinum was quite willing to continue. Even at the end there, they were like, look, we can finish this to make it a sellable product. And Microsoft was like, no, it doesn't meet our vision anymore.
No, that's not quite what happened. We saw the Matt McMuscle's video about
We did.
Where it was, both sides admitted that they wasn't a good fit for them, and it wasn't Platinum being amicable and Microsoft not. It was more complicated than that.
It's always more complicated, but it fits a pattern that Microsoft did back then. They bought out, much like, not Capcom, like EA. They were buying out studios left, right, and center, and then shuttering them within months. It was not a good thing. But Microsoft's thing these days is to try and get more good companies underneath their belt, give them money, and then hands off. They're still looking for games for their systems, which thankfully means Xbox and PC, but they're not being the controlling hand they used to be.
I mean, I'm not going to sing the praises of an evil corporation because they're still an evil corporation, But in terms of the chess move of doing this, it's a pretty good move because the Bethesda umbrella has so many iconic franchises. That and Microsoft has been more than content to be a third party for other consoles.
Yep.
I don't imagine the stuff that was in development for PlayStation is going to not be in development anymore. They're probably just going to publish it. And the same thing with maintaining the stuff they've published over on Switch, right? So Microsoft is kind of doing what they did with Apple. It's like Apple's our competitor, but that doesn't mean we can't make Office for them and make money off them, right? And this Bethesda acquisition means they have so many properties that are now Xbox branded. Even if those properties end up having games on other consoles here and there, this still brings a lot of IP under the Xbox umbrella that they didn't otherwise have. At least in terms of IP that can really capture a lot of hearts and minds, right?
Yeah, I at this point in time, I see the buyout as a good thing. Because I don't see... Now, while I've said that Microsoft has been very hands-off, I also don't see Microsoft letting them, say, release Fallout 5 in the same condition as Fallout 4 or Fallout 76 launched at. Microsoft has a little bit more...
They want more polish out of their final
call
products.
it ego or call it just professionalism, but they demand that their products come out a little bit better in the proper shape than Bethesda is apt to do.
Sometimes. They've made their mistakes. I just find it funny that now Obsidian's under that umbrella. Obsidian and Bethesda are now answering to the same boss.
See, and I'm already so sick and tired of online news outlets being like, oh, does that mean Obsidian can do a Fallout New Vegas 2? Or, can we get another isometric Fallout that no one's asking for?
I want an isometric Fallout.
Well, fuck you.
The isometric Fallout games are, the only good ones.
See, I'm not going to accept that. They are the best that Fallout was. I will admit that. As long as you don't count in Fallout...
For Fallout Tactics?
Yes.
Okay, but keep in mind, Fallout Tactics didn't actually exist. That was just a hallucination we all collectively had.
Fair enough. Look, yes, Fallout was at its best in Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. I'm not going to argue that. I've enjoyed Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. But it was at its best in the isometric days. But that doesn't mean you have to go back to that. I'm actually not that big of a fan of isometric games these days.
Go back to it.
No. Bad. I mean, I used to love games like XCOM and the like, and I can't do it anymore. It's too slow for me. I'm looking for a little more action in my old age.
Which is funny. Why is it that only now I'm starting to really get good at Tetris? What the fuck? This is a young man's game.
But yeah, no, I definitely think this is a good thing for Microsoft. It's a good thing for Bethesda. I definitely want to see the ZeniMax management not get integrated into this Bethesda merger, that they just get their money and go away. Because ZeniMax was never really good at managing the video game aspect of their empire.
Well, what I imagine will happen is that you'll knock on the door, and at that point, the thousands of spiders that comprises each member of the ZeniMax executive team will crawl out of the human flesh suits they've all been piloting and just scurry off into the night, ready to manage another team somewhere. So, well, I don't know.
That would definitely be nice. Speaking of Microsoft... looks like they're taking a page out of Sony's book when it came to the PlayStation Vita and PSP days.
Yeah, the Xbox Series X and Series S, the premium and budget versions of their next-gen consoles, the S being a very reasonably priced $299 US, are their expandable storage options are a proprietary type of storage that Microsoft is charging a fucking premium for.
Over half the console American for an expansion device, yeah.
I don't know if there's much to say about it, except, man, anytime always be on the lookout if a device you have needs some kind of proprietary storage. I promise you that storage is not technically better than an SD card or any other option, and even if it is, it's not worth the markup. Go for things that don't have this shit.
Now, granted, I'm pointing out Microsoft on this, but the X2 card, that the hard drive that goes in... Sorry, M2 card, not X2. The M2 hard drive that is in the PlayStation 5 is also going to be a form of proprietary hard drive as well. Simply because, according to Sony, no one has a card that meets their specifications to go into the PlayStation 5 at this time. Now, this could just be Sony marketing BS, because M2 drives are very prevalent, and I don't believe that Sony has necessarily made a brand new version of that's better than everything on the market, but I could see them having some sort of proprietary connector that is required. So you'll have a couple from Sony and a couple from their certified partners, and that'll be it. So Sony may not come out very well here either.
Yeah, I gotta give props to Nintendo on this one, because they just use SD cards. You can just get anywhere. And yeah, just go, and they're always on sale with deals and getting better storage. Mm-hmm. So kudos to Nintendo on this one. Not that Nintendo hasn't participated in their own price gouging forms of evil, but this is not one of them.
Another thing I should probably mention on this topic is Sony, with their controllers for the PlayStation 5, are going to be $90.
That's almost as much as a Switch Pro controller.
That's American, by the way.
Oh god, that is more than a Switch Pro controller.
Because they saw that Nintendo got away with it, so they figured they can too.
Well, Nintendo's has a gyro in it. I'm not saying that's a feature I ever use. I'm just saying there's extra hardware in there that kind of justifies a slightly higher price. But not the price
the PS4.
Not the price gouging that Nintendo's doing. I'm just saying that there's a reason why.
They're trying to make justification for it. I don't think any controller is worth $90.
Unless it's a premium fucking... If
it's one of the Xbox Elite controllers, maybe.
Yeah. But these aren't going to be that.
No.
These are going to be, the same things that dust is going to get caked into the grid, into the little ridges in. It's going to be like every other controller.
Yeah. Microsoft, however, has already announced that their Xbox Series X controllers will be the same price as the regular Xbox controllers.
That's good.
That's a good thing, yes. Thankfully, that's all I use for my computer, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yay!
Moving over to Nintendo for a moment, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Yeah, this is not an expansion to the old Hyrule Warriors game. It is its own Hyrule Warriors game that's not meant to be a Zelda All-Stars, but more of a legit prequel to Hyrule Warriors. Not Hyrule Warriors, to Breath of the Wild. We talked about this briefly last time, and we saw more gameplay of it, including playable Impa using her Sheikah ninja shit. And young Impa looks remarkably like Paya, who you meet later in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
The game looks like a much prettier Hyrule Warriors. And it's supposed to be much more narratively focused on this specific story. Like, it's not gonna you're not gonna have here's Linkle and Toon Link from another dimension in it. It's all gonna be part of the Breath of the Wild canon. So
well, and when they announced it, I'm hyped for it because I think there's a lot of story to tell about 100 years before Breath of the Wild. The fact that we're gonna see the actual Hyrule Empire as it was before it was destroyed. Impa's slate comes towards Link, he grabs it, activates, and all of a sudden one of the towers rises from the fortress they're fighting in.
Murdering several bokoblins.
And instantly, based off of the architecture and the tower that went up, I can identify what location they were in from Breath of the Wild. And just the fact that they're keeping those details right, that I could tell that, is neat. It seems very open.
There's still a map with walls.
But,
This is still a Dynasty Warriors game.
And that's just that.
It's still a Musou game.
And thankfully, it's an earlier Dynasty Warriors game, because remember, the last one had a full open world system. We don't need that shit.
No, I think Dynasty Warriors and Musou games are at their best when we have maps and objectives, and it's like TIE Fighter, but weird Japanese melee mechanics.
Yeah. No, that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for more story, more details behind the other heroes. Give us some more details out of the, 12-picture backstory that we got back in Breath of the Wild. That's what I'm looking for. I'm also looking for a little bit more details around Calamity Ganon, because the more that I've gone back and played Breath of the Wild again, as well as gone back and played some of the earlier games, I don't think Calamity Ganon had anything to actually do with Ganon.
Maybe not, because if you look at the trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, if that even is going to be what the title is, we see someone who looks remarkably like Ganon imprisoned by a magic hand in the catacombs that Link and Zelda are exploring. So
I'm thinking, and I mean, I've been watching YouTube videos and a whole bunch of other stuff to just kind of fill my time, but I'm thinking more and more that the Calamity ooze that's coming out of Ganon in that trailer is the malice from that boss you defeat, the big bad in Skyward Sword.
Demise?
Demise, yes.
The thing that became Ganon, basically?
It became, didn't.
The thing that ultimately was reborn as Ganon.
And
Ganondorf.
I'm starting to wonder if... Now, we know Ganon is a warlord, conqueror, everything else. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe Breath of the Wild may not try and a redemption arc.
I've wanted a Ganondorf redemption for some time, but I always thought it would be some reincarnation of him that didn't want to be evil, but was compelled to be. And maybe, you know what would help this along? What always helps this shit along? A bigger threat.
Well, the idea that Ganon, he may have been, and I hate using this word because other games use it way too often, corrupted.
Corrupted! That's the word of the day! Pew, pew, pew! I don't have an air horn ready, sorry.
Good. But it is possible that, especially seeing as this is, from what we can tell, the Ganon from...
Every other Ganon, which are
no,
supposed to be the same Oh, wait, no, there's the timelines.
No, this is the one specifically from Twilight Princess.
Not necessarily. Breath of the Wild is supposed to be the last point of the timeline so far.
Yes.
It's supposed to be the furthest along on all the branches.
Yes.
Which is weird because that implies that some kind of time crash happened. Which means that it should be the same Ganon. Unless the Calamity is the result of 3 Ganon souls merging into one by force.
The wound where the hand is touching the Ganon in that cave and everything else is exactly where you stabbed him in Twilight Princess. The stuff that he's wearing appears to be very reminiscent of, again, Twilight Princess's Ganon. We may be completely wrong on that, but for all intents and purposes at this point, it looks like it's the Twilight Princess Ganon that you defeated. And if it is there a chance for redemption there?
I think Ganondorf is a redemption story you could do right.
Why not?
I legit think you could do that right. I really do. But introduce a bigger threat. Doesn't have to be aliens.
Well, Demise itself is...
Demise is lame, though. He's just Akuma, but Ganon.
Okay.
He's like, oh, I have flaming hair and I could block your attacks. I'm so badass.
Okay, look. I get that you don't like Demise because he comes from probably the worst Zelda game.
Oh, no. My disdain for Demise has everything to do with Demise. Let's be real here. I'm just saying, I hope the bigger threat is more interesting than Demise.
Fair enough. What was the big one of the really big announcements out of Square this year? So actually, there's been 2.
Well, yeah.
There's Nier Replicant,
which is the re-release of the Japanese version of the first Nier, and not the American one, which was the old man.
Yep.
And then there's the one I'm more interested in, because it has battle director Square Enix poached from Capcom, then a potentially character action style combat system, Final Fantasy 16. In a rather amazing-looking trailer that seemed to combine a Western fantasy aesthetic with Final Fantasy, like a Lord of the Rings or a Game of Thrones or something, but with Final Fantasy. And I dug that trailer a lot. I really liked what I saw in that teaser. I watched it a bunch of times already. I've seen people's reactions to it. Final Fantasy 16 has me pretty hyped, even now at this early hour.
Now, I'm tempering my delight in the trailer because I remember the original Final Fantasy 15 trailer we got.
By the original, do you mean the one where it was first called 15, or Final Fantasy Versus 13?
No, I mean when it was first called 15.
Okay.
And that was the one that had...
Where they said Versus 13 and then it changed to 15. Yeah.
Where you were literally jumping through a destroying castle, fighting guys while you were zipping around between areas and everything else.
That sounds like a lot earlier when it was still Versus 13.
No, that was the very first trailer we got for 15, when they were still going with a much more dynamic battle.
No, you're remembering it wrong. Final Fantasy Versus 13, at that time it was called that. Noctis was very much like a Kingdom Heartsy dude in a much darker world that was like dark fantasy meets modern day. And then when it became Final Fantasy 15, that's when we have shit like the car and the big overworld. You are mixing your trailers, Dave.
Possibly, but I'll have to look that up. I hope they can pull this off and keep it the way that it's looking, because it does look amazing. It does look like... I even like how one of the soldiers was like, okay, screw the crystals.
The crystals have shaped our destiny for long enough.
Now, that can be both good and bad, because, get rid of the crystals and maybe the world blows up.
Well, we can get a sense of the idea of the world. It's the nations have icons, which are their eidolons, and these icons are these big fucking titan motherfuckers that can wreak havoc on things, and apparently people can become them, like Joshua, that little boy,
yes,
who became Ifrit,
yep,
or Phoenix or something.
Phoenix, actually.
Yeah, and we have the main character, who I don't think was named, vowing to kill someone, possibly because of what they did to Joshua.
Who knows? We got a little teases here and there, but 16 is looking good.
It's looking really good. I was very impressed by Final Fantasy 16's trailer.
I hope we still get some of the character dialogue like in 15 without having to dilute.
I hope I can make camp and have, like, Cheetos. I will say this for Final Fantasy 15. I like that you can hunt a monster in the overworld, get its horn, and go to a 7-Eleven and sell it for a lot of money. When I did that, I was like, did I seriously just beat Behemoth and take his corpse to, like, a fucking Wawa or to fucking Circle K? Just be like, hey, man, I'll get a Slurpee. Oh, and here's Behemoth's horn. It's like, okay, your Slurpee is 20 gil. I'll pay you 1 million gil for the Behemoth horn. So in total, that's what is happening. Like, you literally are driving down a country road, right? You see a modern town. You're going outside the outskirts of a city. You go too far, and an airship of Magitech soldiers is on you as you're bombarded by imps.
See, there are many things I liked about Final Fantasy 15, but its problems dragged it down horrendously. Number one, you killed off characters you didn't have to. You killed off the token female.
Who is a real token in that game.
Which is a real token in that game, yes. Spoilers, of course. You blind the most awesome member of the party. You tried to turn, at the last second, one of your characters into a potential backstabbing threat. That was a totally unnecessary bit of stuff they pulled there in one of the chapters.
There's that boss that they initially designed to take 72 real-time hours to fight.
Oh my...
Although speedrunners cheese that in like an hour.
Yeah. I didn't even bother with that boss.
Adamantoise.
The car idea was interesting. It just took too long and dragged the game down. Though, honestly, driving around was usually better than trying to quick teleport to the area because it took the same amount of time in a lot of cases to drive slash quick travel. So that was not good. And you talk about how going into a 7-Eleven and doing stuff like that was neat.
Yeah, I love
that. Whereas I hated what they tried to do with the real world food.
I like that you have to go to a Cabela's to buy, like, camp equipment to go out and hunt, like, Beelzebub, the fucking destroyer of deer and lightning god.
I liked the idea of, camping out and stuff like that, but I felt they put way too much emphasis on those areas for the stat boost and everything else into real world ramen and everything else. Like, everything was photorealistic.
Like, this prepackaged instant ramen will give me the constitution and dexterity I need to fight Quetzalcoatl, who is roaming the underbrush just outside of this rural school in Alberta.
And it's funny, you mentioned about the airship dropping soldiers on you. At first, I thought that was a neat thing. Like, okay, well, the enemy's trying to track me down, they found me, they dropped soldiers, and I kicked their ass. The only problem is it could happen so fucking often. Like, you just finished defeating the last batch in a 2-minute battle, and already they're dropping set number 2, or 2 minutes later they're dropping another group on you. It happened too often.
Adapt, scrub.
No.
You don't get those guarantees in the real world. The real world, when I'm driving from Edmonton to Calgary, an airship can drop Magitech soldiers at me at any point. Do I complain? No, I park my car, I get my sword out of the trunk, and I fight.
No, you see, what that did was that dragged the game down in a number of areas.
Then I take the remains of the Magitech gear, and at the next 7-Eleven gas station, I sell them and I pay for my tank of gas, and then some.
I liked the exploration of the world because a number of the areas were just neat. And the exploration of the different dungeons to find your various ghost weapons were neat dungeons to actually go into and explore and get storyline for, yes. It was the overworld was bigger than it needed to be.
There is such a thing as a game being too big and too long. That is a real problem. When I was a young lad, I used to have, imagine the dream JRPG that would be engaging throughout its entire 150-hour play time. And then I realized that's more time than I ever want to have in the campaign of a game.
Mm-hmm.
I probably have that amount of time in WoW, but because of its nature, and I'm not shotgunning that all at once, and I'm still getting different stories over the years, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't want to give that all to one game, at least not all at once.
Well, I mean, I'm totally fine with a main game being, 50 to 80 hours. That's a little bit long these days for me, but if that was the main game and then you had all this extra stuff you could do that, double its time, but it was all extra.
Final Fantasy XVI's campaign could be 2 hours long, and if it's good, I will think that is a successful, well-done game.
Let's branch off onto game length here.
Branching off to game length with Dave and Carlos.
I have played games that have been 4 to 6 hours that I consider some of the best games I've ever played.
Mm-hmm.
That cost me $80 or $70 at launch. I paid full price, and I wanted more, absolutely. But what I got was so amazing that I was okay with what I got. I've had other games I paid $20 for that took 40 hours that I was like, why did I bother? Game length does not equate to value. If that is your way of equating value, then you might as well start playing sports games, because then you're going to get your dollar for hour value, if that's your thing. On the other hand, I'm a hypocrite on that scale, because there are certain games I've been like, well, where's the rest of the game?
I think the issue is that there's no objective standard here.
No,
right?
there isn't.
I personally would rather have an amazing 1 hour game like Mega Man 11 than a mediocre 80-hour game like most of the recent Tales games. I would rather have... I think that first one is worth more of my time and money and replaying it.
Yeah.
However, there are people who don't agree with that, and they like to have tasks that I find monotonous to them. They're just fine doing them. It's like yesterday we played Among Us for the first time with a group of friends.
Yeah.
And even though I enjoyed the parts where I was the imposter, and I enjoyed the parts being the crewmate trying to find the imposter, sometimes I'm the crewmate, and I would get murdered immediately by you. And I would just have a relaxing time as a ghost, just doing all the tasks.
Yeah.
And that was fine. That was a little bit of relaxation, right? And there are some people who are like, I like to have an 80-hour game that isn't terribly engaging, but that I can just turn my brain off and play. And the 1-hour game just doesn't give them that time. It's all subjective. I don't think you can attach an objective dollar value to that. I think that there's no objective standard of game length equating to game quality.
Or game value.
Or game value, or game anything. It's all subjective. So, I mean, it's totally fine for you to play a game you liked and wonder where the rest of it was and hope the next one's longer. And it's totally fine for someone to not give a shit about any of that. I think it's all subjective.
Yeah, like, my best example for that would be The Darkness 2.
Darkness!
The Darkness 2 is an example of a short shooter.
Yeah.
That just packed in so much fun and enjoyment into its main campaign between your one lackey reading off the history of certain artifacts you bring back from missions and just being so cheeky about it, to just all the neat shit you could do with the darkness powers, from grabbing like a piece of rebar and putting it through a couple of guys and basically sticking them to the wall, to ripping people apart using machine guns. I mean, yeah, at the end of it, to this day, I'm still like, okay, where's my part 3? For fuck's sakes, where is my part 3? Because that was awesome. I'm probably never going to get it, but it was a $70 game that, yeah, after 6 hours, I was good. I wanted more, I would have enjoyed more, but would more have turned me off a bit? Possibly. It was like a sweet spot for that.
I think as long as the entire time you're playing, you're having a good time, something's done its job.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is even the case in movies and TV series. Like, there's nothing worse than a movie that's 2.5 hours long that didn't need to be 2.5 hours. When you can imagine 1 hour of time trimmed and nothing of value being lost, that's the worst, when you're sitting there through fucking fluff.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in TV series. I've watched some Netflix series where, like, there are so many superfluous scenes where someone's having dinner and a conversation to reinforce points I already picked up. And I'm like, shut the fuck up and get to the next fight. Like, there's something to say about strong pacing.
Yes. Bring Final Fantasy 15 back into this for as far as time value and everything else. 15 was way too freaking long.
Gotcha.
The overworld map, I get why they made it so big, because they wanted to have towns with quests and areas that you could go to that were different than just, flatlands over there or swamps over here or mountains over there. They wanted to have some diversity in this continent that you were on.
Yeah.
But yet, if they had taken half the time from... Because, again, spoiler, Final Fantasy 15 does a whole time jump where all of a sudden you're in a Dark World version of the world. It's always dark out, which means that the demons that only could come out at night is always out and everything else. And you do this time jump as your character Noctis basically gets supercharged and becomes an adult on this island. And I kept on thinking through that very short segment, it was only maybe an hour or 2 hours tops, that, well, damn, I want to go around the whole continent now in this basically post-apocalyptic version of itself to see how mankind is fighting back and, go to areas that I was and see how it's changed kind of thing. You don't. You go right to the the main capital city that you never really get to explore except in the post-apocalyptic on the way to the final boss. And it's like, well, lost opportunity, really.
It would have been nice to see.
Then again, Final Fantasy 15, and this is another thing I don't want to see from 16. I do not want to see a CG movie.
Explaining the events that you have to watch, and that is confusing as well.
Yep. Or a YouTube series that I need to watch either one of them to get the story leading up and during the fucking game. Do not do this. I don't care if you want multimedia stuff. Don't do it, because it did not work for 15 at all. If you cannot get your storyline into the game, rethink your game.
Mario's gotten so stale to me.
Hasn't it? Actually, this is a great topic.
Again, we owe Mario a lot, but it's like the Mario series of games is something that, again, we owe a ton to it, but I still think that whole series is fucking overrated. And what's worse is that if you have the audacity to criticize Mario games, holy shit, will the chuds come out of the woodwork to attack you. There are entire videos of why bad reviews of Super Mario Odyssey aren't valid. Like, Mario doesn't need people to defend it. First of all, Mario Odyssey is an extremely highly rated game. And secondly, who cares if people don't like it? People are allowed to dislike games, man. Like, look, there are people who don't like Mario 2, even though I love Mario 2. Yeah, they're allowed to dislike a thing I like. And people think Mario should be completely untouchable. It's like the same kind of people believe that Microsoft ruined Rare when Rare ruined themselves.
Well, that's just it. Just because a company owns something doesn't mean that they're the ultimate cause of the demise.
I've seen people argue that, like, Killer Instinct should be given back to Rare, and all I can think of was Rare has made 0 good Killer Instinct games. Every single Killer Instinct game they made has been a piece of shit. There's one good Killer Instinct game, and Rare had nothing to do with it. Oh, and guess what? Published by Microsoft. Like,
when it comes to Mario, the last one that I played all the way through is Super Mario 3D World on Wii U. And that was because I was playing with a friend. It made it more fun. If I'd been playing single player, I never would have made it through it. Now, that game was long. That was a long game. Mario Odyssey, I still to this day have not finished because I got fucking bored. And that's the problem. This is a game where game length does not equal value. It's too long. I got bored. Yes, I can go into different zones and find a million fucking stars. If I'm not having fun finding those things, or if it's not, organic for exploring the world and everything else, I'm not finding that fun. So it's like, yay.
Well, actually, Dave, in Mario Odyssey, they're called moons. You don't find stars, okay, Dave? It's moons in Mario Odyssey.
Yay. But that is the exact problem, is Mario sits on a pedestal that people think that nobody can reach. They think that pedestal has just kept on going up and up and up. Unfortunately, it's more mired in shit, and it's drowning.
There are a lot of Nintendo properties people think this of. I've seen people who will accept no criticism of any Zelda game at all.
Well, no. Zelda games are completely open to criticism.
Unless it's the CDI games or Zelda 2. The same chuds who will say, oh, you can't say bad shit about Skyward Sword will shit on Zelda 2 like it's the latest fashion.
Okay. My opinion, Zelda 2 wasn't that great. But here's the thing. I wasn't good at Zelda 2.
No, you weren't.
I have tried over the years to go back and play that game, and I just came to the realization that, yeah, I can get behind the mechanics and everything else. I just don't care. I'm no good at it. Therefore, I'm not going to say the game sucks. It wasn't for me. It's the same way how people have Majora's fucking Mask on this pedestal that can't be criticized. That game is a giant steaming pile of time shit.
Now, hang on. If Zelda 2 is not for you, it's totally okay for you to call it a piece of shit. This whole idea that I don't like a game but it's still good is bullshit. It's all subjective. If you don't like something, it's bad to you. And that's fine. Even though you're wrong and Zelda 2 is great. But that's a subjective thing, right?
Well, no, but that's just it, though. I'm not saying that Zelda 2 is bad. I'm not.
You wish it well. What I say about things I don't want to.
No. You see, I don't use that phrase because that's just a phrase that I've come to hate.
I use it when I don't want to dunk on something, but I just don't care.
I know. Zelda 2 was just not for me.
We're getting into some deep-rooted issues this podcast.
It's not.
We're going to end up in a fist fight by the time we're done here.
No, I don't think so. It just wasn't for me. It's not my sort of Zelda game, and that's fine. It's the same way how Majora's Mask is not for me. By the time Majora's Mask came out, I was already tired of the go through the same day multiple time mechanic time management simulator.
What other games really did that at the time?
By the time that I got to Majora's Mask.
Oh, okay.
And
that changes everything.
That changes everything because my first example of that sort of game, other than say an actual simulator like Harvest Moon sort of thing, would have been on Xbox. There's Zombie 1.
What Harvest Moon game puts you in a Groundhog Day scenario?
No, I said time management. I didn't say...
Okay. It's like, I didn't grow the crops right. Everyone dies!
No, and that's just it. But Capcom brought out their one zombie game that you're in the mall.
Dead Rising?
Dead Rising.
Yeah.
And Dead Rising did that exact Majora's Mask stuff where you're going through the same number of days trying to get everything right to make sure something doesn't happen, to get to the end. I killed myself on that. I managed to finish the game and get the best ending, but ever since then, I have despised the Groundhog Day mechanic. If you give me a game that has that mechanic, I'm already out. So when I got finally to Majora's Mask and realized that's what it was, Majora's Mask never stood a chance.
What about a game that only makes you do that loop one time?
That's called a game.
Like Astro Boy on Game Boy Advance. You play through the first time and you get the bad ending, but then what happens is the Phoenix gives Astro Boy the power to stage select, but Astro Boy's playing through the stages with knowledge of what happened, which means you can go back and forth and actually figure out how to get the good ending.
And funny enough, that's fine. Because I'm not being forced to grind through the same events over and over and over again. Even something like, of all things, Nier. Nier Automata, I go through a bunch of the events multiple times from different aspects or different viewpoints and everything else, but I still have to do that. That's okay. I'm getting a different viewpoint. You're giving me additional information even though I'm going through the same event a second time. I'm not being expected to basically tweak how much time I can do X, Y, and Z while figuring out the perfect path for day 1, day 2, and day 3, or however many days to get the good ending.
So now here's where I throw a monkey wrench in your little comic. Hades and other roguelites, which are the same formula, but that you enjoy playing. Is it because of the randomness and the fact that the experience is different?
Yes, because every time, between the weapons I get, between the enemies, or the path I choose myself, the experience is different in some way each time. It's not a set world within set boundaries with set events I must do in certain times. It's that level of time management that I'm just like, fuck you, I don't want to have to write down a piece of paper that I need to rescue Sam over in store X by such and such a time, or else fuck me for the ending. Or in Majora's Mask, I have to make sure I have X mask to do X event before X time. It's just, especially as I get older, I want a game to actually respect my time. And more, I feel that doesn't respect my time. I'm being shoehorned into playing it the way it exactly wants me to.
I mean, yeah, it's not wrong to design a game like that, and it's not wrong to not want to have anything to do with a game like that. So I 100% get it. The point is, don't put your games on pedestals. There's nothing above criticism, including the almighty Mario.
Going back to Zelda for a second, Skyward Sword. Why is Skyward Sword seen as probably the worst of the 3D Zeldas?
Well, I can answer why I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, because when I did touch it and I played it with the waggle controls, I realized that this was an aberration.
I was okay with the motion controls at first. The extra sensor they had, I mean, the swordplay was a lot more direct, and I was okay with that. I was looking for something like a lightsaber kind of battle system. The problem was, even using the motion controls for flying around, I still found fun for a while. But motion controls did drag that one down. Skyward Sword is the worst for other reasons, though. I like Skyward Sword for the fact that, Link and Zelda were an actual couple. That's about it. Faye can go fuck itself. Or is it Fee?
It's Fee.
Fee.
Fi. Foe?
That mechanic was unnecessary and annoying. The stages were not done well. I mean, levels were very poorly put together. They were not fun to explore. The overall story was not very great either. I see people asking, well, we want a version of it without motion controls on Switch. That's not going to fix it. Skyward Sword's not going to be much better without motion controls. It just was not.
It's like when people ask for a polished, glitchless Sonic 06. That game is still gonna fucking suck.
Yes.
It's gonna suck less, but it's gonna blow.
You can polish a turd. That doesn't mean it's not a turd. You'd have to go back and remake that from the ground up. And if you're gonna do that, you might as well just make a brand new Sonic game.
Speaking of which, we didn't get any Sonics in Tokyo Game Show. And I'm a little disappointed by this.
No, we didn't. Also expected a Persona announcement this year. Yeah, I actually expected a Persona 6 tease.
Hang on, maybe something happened while we were recording.
Yeah, I doubt it. Actually, it looks like the Tokyo Game Show this year is rather...
Holy shit. There was nothing.
And that almost defines the Tokyo Game Show this year. Is there was nothing new announced that was groundbreaking. It was stuff we already knew was coming, and we got a little bit more information on. I mean, Near Replicant, the new gameplay footage for Hyrule Warriors, Breath of the Wild prequel, Age of Calamity. It has an actual subtitle.
Hyrule Warriors 2 Breath of Fire prequel.
Yes. Unlike most Tokyo Game Shows, they haven't come out the gates swinging at all.
COVID.
No. You see, you can try. That is the excuse they're going to give.
That is the excuse I'm going to believe, Dave. It's a global pandemic. Not everyone's adjusted. Don't call it like a making the excuse that there's a pandemic going on. Give me my video games.
That's not at all what I was trying to say there. Even the announcement that the game's being worked on at this point would be fine. You don't have to give a trailer or something. And yes, I realize the pandemic has majorly delayed everything. But I still would have expected something from Tokyo Game Show this year, and we haven't gotten anything. So either they're being very conservative in what information they give out because they're either not far enough into development, or it's been delayed, or even the possibility that some of these games may be canceled because of the pandemic and issues around it. But usually we get one or two big announcements out of the Tokyo Game Show. And they haven't done anything, which is still weird. That's all I'm saying. Even just the announcement that they're looking into Game X would be something right now, but we're not getting anything.
Jeff Keighley announced the Game Awards for December.
Who?
Jeff Keighley. The Game Awards.
Who?
He's that guy who did the Game Awards. We saw it last year, and it was a waste of my time.
Again, who?
Jeff Keighley, Dave. He's the guy who does the Game Awards.
And nobody cared.
Jeff Keighley. He's, there's the show. It's called the Game Awards.
Keep on saying his name like
Jeff
I care.
Geoff.
You really want to watch this Game Awards thing, I'm guessing.
No, I'm not going to. You could have pure vibranium chains holding me down, and I will break through them.
It was a waste of time last year. Then again, so were those awards. I don't know. This year seems very, very conservative on the amount of games we've had announced. I mean, some big ones sure have been announced, but just between everything going on, it has been a very weird year for games. I mean, the game being played the most right now is a 2-year-old game, Sleeper Hit.
We should talk about Among Us for a little bit.
Sure.
So we played Among Us with a bunch of friends yesterday. It's a fun game. One of the games, what happened is we had one traitor because we were one imposter with, I think at the time we had 7 people. We were just figuring things out.
Yeah.
That imposter ended up being Poe. Now, we didn't know this. What happened is we voted for you off. And then after you were voted, Poe on the mic said something to the effect of, time to get fucked, boy, or some shit like that. Something that was an obvious kind of
Evil.
dead giveaway that he was being evil.
Yep.
So I sat by the emergency button, pounded it immediately the moment I could, be like, hey everyone, did we all hear what Poe said there? And they're like, yep, voting Poe. And it turns out it was him. So either I asked him about this. He wasn't trying to out himself. He was trying to do a stupid little taunt. But it's such a stupid move to do when you're the imposter. There were other good moments, like a friend we were playing with popped out of a vent, and I was running from him to get to the emergency button. And man, I was like, oh man, he's a traitor. Popped out of a vent, tried to kill me, chased me with a knife. You murdered me one game, like, immediately. First game, Dave kills me.
First game, you weren't even 2 seconds out of the cafeteria, and I had you dead.
Yeah, you had me dead. My imposter strategy was to just not kill a lot and just let people destroy each other.
Whereas I hadn't, even in the last game, I hadn't worked out the saboteur part of it. So the next time we play, I will be doing a lot more stuff like that to mess with you guys.
Yeah.
But then again, I thought at first that we had to go back to the cafeteria to push the button for calling a meeting. You don't have to do that.
You know, if you find the body, you can just report it for that right away. No, Among Us is a good game. There's a reason it gained popularity, because it's unheard of. It was released 2 years ago, and people are only discovering it now. And you've probably seen a lot of streamers streaming the shit out of it and giving it a lot of overexposure, but the truth of the matter is that it is, in fact, a very fun game that you should play. And it's not even that expensive. It's like $5. Go play it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever played the board game Werewolf,
yeah, the tabletop.
You've basically
kind of
played this.
Yeah. It's good. Play Among Us, or watch people play it, or both.
It does need joystick controls.
It really doesn't, but it would be nice to have. The movement is not that complicated.
No, but it would be more comfortable for some people to play on a controller.
Yes, the option should be there. I'm just saying that of all the new features that they're going to add to the game instead of making a sequel, I would say that's not priority 1 even. I don't even think that's priority 3. Though they'll do it.
That's, from what I understand, their priority 1. Accessibility is a big thing.
They are wanting to bring it to consoles, so that would be a definite plus to bring it to consoles. Also, some kind of built-in voice solution so that we don't have to use the honor system on a push-to-talk Discord channel would be nice, too.
It works.
It worked. Nobody broke the rules, so it all worked out, right? So
I did from the grave tell you to go after yourself one time during a meeting.
Oh no, that's fine. I did the same thing many times. It's no problem. You have to learn to lie and to be a real shitbag in that game, right? So
I do like how the chat can only be read by the people who are dead.
Yeah.
Even if a person's alive and they open it, it won't show them.
Well, the alive people have their own chat too, so yeah. No, it's a fun game. Play Among Us.
Okay, what's the next topic?
Oh, cool. I like how you loaded the list and then looked at me, and I can't see the list from here, and you asked me what the next topic is.
Let's start with an Indivisible.
Dave, I have a knock-knock joke for you, but you have to start it. Go.
Fuck you.
Oh, Christ, Mike Z. Now, full disclosure, I have spoken to and even worked a little bit with Mike Z in the past. The speaking to is when I met him at an EVO, and the working with is when I edited some of his audio when he did a guest spot in one of Novril's videos on Novril's channel. Now, this was years ago, and obviously I do not support things that Mike Z is alleged to have done. And I do believe he has done these things given the number of reports and the veracity of them and the fact that some of them come from other people who I also respect and admire. So, oh boy, what a sad state of affairs. Skullgirls is going to survive because it's owned by Autumn Games and its development can be taken elsewhere, including potentially to the new studio that the Lab Zero people founded, a worker co-op called Future Club. It's Future Club, right?
Yes.
Future Club. So shout-outs to them and best wishes and best of luck.
Well, it makes sense for them to take it on, seeing as they're the devs that did Skullgirls.
But now we have 505 Games being the owners of the Indivisible property.
Yep.
And wanting to distance themselves from everything. All new work, including completed work for backer rewards and whatnot, is being cancelled and will not be delivered for Indivisible.
Which means no Shantae or any of those characters.
Nope.
Which is really sad, because according to a Twitter post after that cancellation post came out, is they were like, yeah, all these characters are 100% the assets are done. Animations are done. They just need to be put into the game.
What a fucking mess.
Now, I guess we should almost be glad in this case that studio's closing completely.
Lab Zero?
Yeah.
Lab Zero was fully owned by Mike Z, so when its board wanted to out him and he didn't like the terms, all he did was fire the board.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's my dream in the future to own my own company that perhaps delves in animation and game design. And I always thought I'd like to own that and have complete control over it. But I'm wondering if that might even be the best move, because worker co-ops are what's best for workers. And me, Mr. Anti-Capitalist, I would kind of be a hypocrite to do that, right? I get that Mike Z wanted to own his baby. He made that engine. He's definitely a brilliant designer. We can't take that away from him. But in the end, though, he kind of drove it into the ground to protect himself. And given that I do believe the allegations against him, this is a real shitty move on his part.
Mm-hmm. But with the studio being closed, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Indivisible title gets sold off to somebody else.
Sure would be nice.
That is possible. I mean, it won't go to Future Club. Yeah, Future Club. I was already putting their word on there. Maybe it'll go to them. Not likely. Maybe even Autumn Games maybe want to get their hands on it. This seems like Mike Z's development career is kind of done.
Well, maybe, the thing about canceling and why cancel culture is shitty and why it doesn't work is that it only punishes people who don't have the money and clout to recover from it. You can't cancel J.K. Rowling, even though she's a horrific TERF and transphobe and a terrible human being. You can't cancel her. She is made of money and clout. It doesn't work. The only thing cancel culture affects are people with no money who occasionally make terrible mistakes that there should be a path to forgiveness for, assuming said mistake wasn't just blown way out of proportion, like what happened recently with the She-Ra cast. Will Mike Z rebound from this? Maybe. I sure hope it comes with an apology and some kind of action taken on his behalf to make up for what he's done. This doesn't mean he's going to be gone from development for the rest of his life. I don't imagine that will be the case. I'm more concerned about the former Lab Zero developers, who sound like they're moving forward, so good for them. And I'm especially concerned about Indivisible being kiboshed. They're at the very least indefinitely postponed in terms of its content. So
I guess the one thing we have to look at is Indivisible is done as a game.
Yeah.
Yes, those guest characters would have been fine to have and were promised, but, I mean, basically, Mike Z's taking his ball and going home.
If I played devil's advocate and looked at things from his perspective, okay, I was a giant creep to a bunch of people, and I made a lot of women feel very uncomfortable, and made people's lives hellish. Well, guess I'll hit the old dusty trail. Yeah, I can kind of see why he did it.
Okay, moving on from depressing to still kind of depressing.
Yeah, depressing!
You've got something to say to Nintendo.
What is this, the platform royale stuff?
This is the platformer royale.
I've recently played a couple of platform royale games, battle royale games that are 2D platformers, basically. One is Soviet Jump Game. Who's the developer on that?
Tom Glunt.
Soviet Jump Game, developed by Tom Glunt and published by Game Grumps. Soviet Jump Game is a great little game. The mechanics are obviously Mario. The aesthetic is comrades in Soviet Russia playing a lost title from the 70s or whatever. That's just this online connected jumping game that's basically Mario. So you have Mario-esque power-ups and you stomp other players to defeat them and try to run them into obstacles. And there's sub-areas that you can take pipes to get to, and the Iron Curtain advances on each one of them, slowly closing in. And you don't want to get hit by the Iron Curtain because you'll lose right then and there. Incredibly fun battle royale kind of game. I tend to like battle royales that aren't the traditional PUBG formula, which is why I like Tetris 99. And Soviet Jump Game is a blast. It controls really well, native gamepad support, good gamepad support, and it's free to play. You pay for aesthetics, they don't affect the gameplay, and I don't see myself spending much or any money on this game. But I would still recommend it to people looking for a good platform royale, especially if Super Mario 35 disappointed you the way it disappointed me. Super Mario Brothers 35 is the other one that I played. Have you played this game yet, Dave?
It sucked.
It's not great. The problem with Super Mario Brothers 35 is that, okay, I played a bunch of matches, and then I was losing because I was trying to speedrun through the game, play fast, play smart, kill as many enemies as I can, and I would always fall in a pit, fall in a pit, fall in a pit, fall in a pit. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hang back and turtle and be conservative. Get a fire flower, go one screen at a time, go to the warp zones, always go to the easy levels, get the stars, get the easy points, get the easy time gains. And yeah, that won me the day right there. And at that moment, I'm like, wow, I don't really want to play this anymore. Because then I went online and I watched videos, and that's how you win. The problem in competitive games with turtling being the dominant strategy is that sucks. It's okay for turtling to be a strategy that could work, but that has to compete with an aggressive strategy. And it's okay for aggressive strategies to work, because that keeps games fast-paced. That's the Arxis method. But when turtling is the way to win, and being lame wins the day, it makes for a boring game. And I don't know if this is ever going to get patched out of Mario Brothers 35.
No.
Because this is a limited time game to push Nintendo's quarterly ratings or quarterly profits up. So, if they do add updates and make speedrunning a viable strategy compared to being defensive, and there's give and take and pros and cons to each, I could see myself playing it a lot more. In the meantime, it becomes a war of attrition of whose thumb is going to get tired first, spamming fireballs or just kind of slowly going through things to try to send enemies. I don't know how you fix that.
I do.
Someone I talked to says trash enemies that get sent to you shouldn't give you time, maybe. That's one thing that might work, so you can only use the natural enemies in a level. You have suggested that the game should be auto-scrolling, and I don't think that's necessarily a good solution because you eliminate the ability to play it fast, but to piggyback off your idea, if you did what Soviet Jump Game did and you had an iron wall coming behind you,
yeah,
and you had to stay ahead of the game, and you got more points the further ahead you were, that might help.
Well, and actually that's just what I'm thinking is, okay, auto-scrollers piss people off. Some of the worst levels in Mario games are auto scrollers.
I get that, even though I like a bunch of auto scrollers. Yeah,
Fair enough. You're wrong, but that's fine. But if you did have that death wall coming behind, you could still speedrun it, but it eliminates the ability to turtle in high enemy areas. You're right. The pits are what usually kills people, but the turtling, it's just not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I get rid of the fire flower.
I don't know, Prime. That's a Mario staple.
Nope. I get rid of the fire flower. I give you the Tanuki suit or something like that. Mainly because with one of the raccoon or Tanuki or whatever suits, you could still, if you want to be really I even award bonus points for this. You could do the whole tail swipe to get rid of enemies, but you couldn't do that on, say, a spike enemy. You're forcing people to have to move. Well, the fire flower, all it does is if the fire flower wasn't there, the turtling wouldn't be as bad, I think.
I don't think it's the fact that the fire flower's there. I think it's the fact that beating enemies gets you time, and even though using the fire flower gets you the least amount of it, it's still usually enough. Mm-hmm. You get more by just grabbing a star or by stomping enemies, or you get progressively more if you, say, kick a Koopa shell and hit more and more enemies with the same shell. But maybe the issue is that fire flower, like, you can't take away a fire flower from a Mario 1 Battle Royale. But maybe defeated enemies don't give time if you beat them with a fire flower. Or maybe they give coins instead, like in some later Mario games, so you can use them to power the roulette.
And honestly, this was a cheap and not that much effort put into game. Because if I was going to make this, number one, it wouldn't have just been Mario 1. I would literally have had you going across the Mario multiverse. You know, you go from Mario 1 by one, all of a sudden you're now in level 1 of, I don't know, Mario 3.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been jumping between multiple games and multiple styles to allow that kind of freedom and everything else. But no, they went with the lowest common denominator.
It does feel that way.
The levels, there aren't that many levels you can actually go through.
It legit feels like they looked at Tetris 99 and be like, let's do this with Mario for a quick cash grab.
Yeah.
Because a game like Tetris or Puyo Tetris, when you're competing in those games, you're kind of playing your own single-player game and trying to do cool shit to send enemies to make their single-player game harder. But that works in Tetris and Puyo because of the whole design of that game. That's the whole point. So something like Tetris 99, or if there was a Puyo 99, would be fine under this system. The problem with doing this with Mario is that you're not letting people compete with each other. You're testing who can do time trials better, but you're not even doing that. You're testing who can do time trials lamer. Part of the reason Soviet Jump Game works is because you're all together. You literally have to use your power-ups to fight the other Mario stand-ins, or stomp them, or avoid being stomped yourself.
Like, if I couldn't change how the game works right now too much, the first thing I would do is, for those people that are actually doing proper speed running of the levels, if you finish a level, that should send a giant chunk of stuff at your opponents. Like, I get that it's kind of score-based, and as you kill enemies, it sends trash out to other players. The most trash should come from ending a level.
Do you think killing trash should give you time?
No. They're trash.
Yeah.
Why should they?
Exactly. And not only do they give you time, they get sent back.
Yeah. No. Trash should not be reciprocal. You're being sent trash to try and hold you up from finishing.
At the very least, it should send less back than it does. Like, it's kind of like, you can use Tetris trash against the enemy, but then they can vary up how they do their combos to send you more difficult trash. You can even use Puyo trash, but it's a lot tougher to use Puyo trash.
It is.
So maybe, because there's obviously this excitement and this comeback factor. I do think trash should be worth way less and maybe no time. but maybe trash enemies only have like a 50% chance to get sent back on kill, something like that.
The most trash should be generated from a person finishing a level.
Sure.
Period. Right there, I've just changed it so that those that are speedrunning the levels are now doing more damage to their opponents.
Yeah, right now beating a level gets you some time. And you get that same amount of time going through a warp zone, pretty much.
Yeah,
which
so
lets you
what?
pick the level you're going to be from a selection of random 3.
Yeah.
Soviet Jump Game, great. Mario 35 needs work. Probably not going to get it because lots of streamers are playing it and like it. And I'm like, God.
Streamers are the worst.
Some of them.
Most.
What's next on the docket, Dave?
Came across a little post that Sony is removing your ability to buy PS3 games, PS Vita, and PSP games from the web store with its new upgrade / redo coming up. This kind of fits into a backwards compatibility topic I wanted to get into, but this also makes no sense because literally all the web store does is flag your account to be able to download that game, so there's really no point to remove that content from your store. Now, you can still get it directly from the store on the system. That's just ultimately what we're going to see is there won't be any sales that contain PS3 games and behind. Doesn't make much sense, but I guess Sony can be lazy.
Well, I think they want to just push PS5 stuff. And by making it more difficult to just easily get things on your systems without firing them up, they're kind of making people... They're subtly, insidiously doing the Apple thing and trying to make you spend more money on the latest hardware. I recently had to upgrade someone's Mac, and it turns out their Mac will only support up to a certain version of OS X. Mm-hmm. It'll only go up to 10.6 instead of the current 10.15. And there are no further versions of Chrome for that version they have. And their versions of Safari are still asking you for the latest Flash Player plugin.
Yep.
Which is set to be deprecated by the end of this year anyway, so...
On the topic of Flash, I'm going to kind of miss it a little bit.
A little bit. It's the end of an era when you could plug in a thing that lets you do cool shit.
I mean, I can see somebody coming up with an actual Flash player application better than the current one. Because the one that the makers of Flash made all those years ago doesn't really work very well. Mm-hmm. But I can see someone coming up with an actual Flash player browser kind of idea to still be able... Because there are still little games and little animations and stuff like that use Flash that I don't want to see just disappear.
The last big Flash game I can think of hasn't been released yet, but it's Mega Man X Corrupted by the same guy who did Mega Man Unlimited.
There you go.
Which you and I played, which was quite fun. Yeah, I'll miss it. One could argue that HTML5, and they're at 5 right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, the HTML standard builds a lot of that stuff in, which is how it should be. I don't really want Adobe to be the master of my fate here.
Yeah.
Because Adobe...
Well, and let's face it, Flash isn't being gotten rid of because it was bad. It really wasn't. Everybody and their mother basically decided that because Adobe was being assholes, that they wanted Flash gone and basically a new idea behind it to be built into the browser. I mean, ultimately, Adobe did itself on this.
Which is usually the case with Adobe.
It really is. So, yeah, I'm glad it's going because it's Adobe, but I will miss it because of some of the... We're going to lose a part of that history. Unless, of course, somebody does build an actual Flash player like that.
The Flash archives. 1,000 years in the future, you and I are tearing through the ruins of old Earth. We need to come across the Flash Museum where a holographic Flash player is on loop and we have to dodge all the horny Flash games that everyone on Newgrounds made.
Even speaking of that site, I mean...
It's still around.
It's still around, but when Flash gets completely shut down and blocked by the browsers, so does Newgrounds.
Newgrounds has so much horny shit that I hope that doesn't happen. I need to be horny sometimes, and Newgrounds helps with that.
Speaking of backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
We're really seeing different outlooks when it comes to Sony and Microsoft right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft has it easier, I will admit, in this area, because their system has never jumped from the PC kind of standard that the Xbox has run on. So having compatibility all the way back to the original Xbox really isn't hard to emulate for Microsoft. They've kind of got easy street for that. But Microsoft is still having all that backwards compatibility in their system. So, I mean, your old system kind of can be sold off. Whereas Sony is basically saying, yeah, most of your PlayStation 4 games will work. And they gave us a list of which ones absolutely won't. It was like 10 games. Now, I looked at some of the way they put their words on that, and I'm a little bit worried about stuff, because they're like, yeah, you know, they'll work, but there might be glitches and everything. It's like, okay, guys, look, it either works or it doesn't. If there's graphical glitches, no. Emulation is a very fine-tuned machine for certain things. And if you can't get your emulation to work properly, don't tell me it's backwards compatible, because it's really not. And then we have the whole debacle going on right now between people buying games on the PS4, which some get automatic upgrades to the PS5. You get versions of it. Other ones are like, no, fuck you, buy it again. That's basically EA and Activision's go.
Sony is leaving it up to the developer, or to the publisher rather, which is a mistake.
But even there, even for the ones that you have to buy again, or that you automatically get a version for the PS5, we're seeing an interesting thing in that they're saying, well, okay, some of your progress will go over, but not all of it. Pardon? Excuse me?
Only some of my Final Fantasy VI progress will go through. I'm in the world of Ruin, but I don't know who Kefka is.
It's like for NBA, whatever the 2001 or version 21, or whatever the hell the latest one is. For them, only part of your season progress will move over. So what? Am I currently in the finals of the NBA, but my stats are back to 1 because I've got no progress anymore? If you cannot at least do what Diablo freaking 3 did, going from the PS3 to the PS4, then don't. Just say, fuck you, your progress doesn't move over at all, you've got to restart. And with the cloud, how is this hard? You literally grab the PS4 save down to the PS5, which you've obviously got to be able to do if you can play PS4 games, and then you convert it. How is this hard?
Money. Buy it again, pleb.
Well, and games are all costing $10 more going forward, and everything else. I think we're going to see a significant hit with people being able to afford not just the system, but the games going forward. Because you're taking things out of the impulse buy area, and I mean, the controllers themselves are almost $100 now.
This is where I count myself lucky, because since I don't like a lot of AAA games, the games that I find are the best games and the ones I want to play are often either indie or not indie but cheap. Speaking of which, if you pre-order NHL 21 from EA Sports,
oh boy,
there's a reward you get from it. Do you know what the reward is?
Oh.
The reward is NHL 94 Rewind. It's NHL 94 completely remade, but you can use modern teams on it. And it plays like NHL 94.
Well, yes, you can't get it any other way.
Correct. I want this game!
That is
NHL
hilarious.
94 is maybe the only sports video game I've ever loved that isn't a golf game. And this isn't just 94 mode. No, this is legit pixel art NHL 94 remake, but with modern teams. They're doing this, and I can't because I have to pre-order shitty NHL in the 21 to get it. EA does a good move and then hides it behind the bad. Fuck.
That's actually kind of hilarious.
I want to play this on a Genesis controller.
Oh, lordy. That's hilarious.
I want to star cursor move to the closest player and intercept a goal. I want games to go to 12-11 in period 1.
Well, I guess speaking of bullshit, or at least what I think is bullshit, have you seen the way that Diablo 4 is going to be doing its skill trees?
I have seen some Diablo Development Diary updates. I appreciate that they're doing these regularly. There are a lot of things about this game I like. I like that the barbarians seem to work the way I've always wanted WoW warriors to work, where they literally have like an arsenal on them and they pull out different weapons for different skills. I love that. I love that druids are working in a way that I've always wanted them to, where you literally do the shapeshift skill and then you transform and do it and stay in that form for a little bit. I like that a lot better than transforming for 180 seconds or whatever and needing to worry about when you're going to turn back in the middle of a pack or whatnot. A lot of cool things. I do know there is a skill tree, but I don't know much about it, so why don't you fill me in?
So, literally, the skill tree is a picture of a tree.
Okay, I did see that. See that.
With branches and everything else going out.
Yeah.
Now, by end game and permanently, you will only at any one time be able to unlock about 30% of your tree.
Okay.
And that's it ever.
That's fine. You're building a character. You're not trying to build an every person who can do every job.
And that's fair, but the reason they're doing it is they want people to have multiple barbarians. They want people to have multiple druids, for example, because it seems like you're not going to be able to do your skill tree.
Cool. I'm not going to play this game now. That by itself will make me not play your game. If I can't respec, I'm out. The whole reason I don't play Path of Exile is because their developers have said, we'll let you respec a couple times, but then that's it. Fuck you. I just won't play your game then. Fuck no respecking. But go on.
Well, this is why I'm bringing it up, because if one thing that Blizzard should have learned over the years of like Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 is that people want to try new things on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to make a forever decision. That's not how Diablo should work. I mean, even Diablo 2, you could get items to respec your character.
Eventually, they gave you that function. You couldn't for the longest time.
Yes, I know. I think they introduced that with the expansion, in fact.
Nope. That was an update that came out like a decade after the game was released.
Was it?
In a very late patch after D3 was already announced.
Huh. I don't remember it being that delayed.
Yeah, for the longest time.
Then again, I mean, I did play on PC, so we had character editors. We could do it ourselves.
That's right. Yeah. No,
so maybe that's probably why I never saw it as a problem, because I'm like, okay, well, I want to try this now.
People who legitimately want you to be trapped in your build without the ability to experiment can... I would invite them to give me a rim job, but I don't want to get off on them. So instead, I invite them to...
Fuck off.
No, that's still making me horny. I don't like them. Let's put it that way.
It goes against everything that people... Okay. Just by what we just said, not everybody, but we want to be able to experiment. Even fucking WoW lets you do that.
I can see wanting you to only be able to change up your skills in a safe area, and once you commit to a build, once you start an area, you have to stick to it for the rest of that area. I get that. I get they want to lock you there so that you can't just quickly switch things on the fly. They want you to plan a build and take the whole dungeon in mind. No problem there. But then you gotta let me just switch things up so that I can try something else when I get bored of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or even better, give me the ability to have multiple loadouts. Like that's something that I wish Castlevania Harmony of Despair let me do, because while some characters have very one-note builds in that game, others, like Soma, could have so many different varieties. Like, you could have physical Soma, caster Soma, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So, and even that game let you switch things up at the save points in the middle of a level. And that game was very restrictive.
It was.
So if D4 is literally not... I have no problem with limiting you to how much of that tree you can have. In fact, I like that. If they are literally not going to let you respec ever, then I guess I'm not playing Diablo 4, because I will not tolerate that crap.
Agreed completely. Let's shift a little bit and talk about Square Enix, I guess.
Now, we did talk earlier in the program, we talked about FF16 a little bit.
Just a little bit. More of a brief mention than anything else.
And certainly that was talked about earlier in this broadcast, and not a past one that I just haven't gotten around to editing and we're just adding to after the fact.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that definitely didn't happen.
Square has got to be, I'd almost say, the worst if Nintendo didn't exist when it comes to how they see the value of their games.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I would love to play Octopath Traveler, but I'm not buying it for retail on Switch, and its price hasn't gone down since it's been released like 2 years ago.
Nope.
And on PC, it costs even more.
Square loves to overcharge for their games.
And they overcharge for their games forever.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Chrono Trigger. The broken-ass Chrono Trigger that they've had on that system on there forever. Or even Final Fantasy 3/6.
Yeah, Final Fantasy... The garbage Steam version of 6, which I still regret buying.
I mean, even with all the fan fixes to graphics and everything else, it still isn't as good as the Super NES version.
No, it's not. And it's a premium to play this garbage Android port.
It's $35, $40 easily.
Yeah, that's not worth that.
And I mean, their discount during the Steam sales might get it down by 5%. Like, Square thinks it's too good for everything. Just like Nintendo.
It's apt that you compare it to Nintendo, because Nintendo will do this sometimes, like their 3D All-Stars collection. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is a collection of Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy with a pittance of new features for an obscene price for the collection, and it's even limited time to boot, so that you're not going to be able to buy it after a certain date, because Nintendo never wants to lower the price, and they want you to help shore up their financial projections for this quarter. If you go look online, you will see there are loads of emulation mistakes and word control issues that plague 3D All-Stars. Hell, Super Mario All-Stars for SNES didn't have this many. They had some, but for the most part, all these still played like their originals.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not the case for 3D All-Stars. There is emulation artifacts in Mario Sunshine. Cubes that you only see in emulation appear in this collection.
Wow.
There's little thought given to how Mario Galaxy's cursor controls. They don't use the right stick. They insist you use gyroscoping to do that. Mario 64 uses a later version of it that removes some of Mario's lines and removes a bunch of speedrunning tricks, which aren't really a casual gamer's thing, but when you want to learn how to speedrun, or you want to have a modern platform to do a speedrun, it's a big deal that you can't backwards long jump anymore. Hell, even a casual player who wants to use a speedrunning trick to do cool shit might appreciate that. At the very least, this collection should let you pick what version of Mario 64 you want to play. It at least should not have emulation artifacting in Sunshine, and it should at least not only let you play Mario Galaxy in a more intuitive way, it should have had Mario Galaxy 2. There's no excuse to not have this on there. Fuck you, Nintendo, for this bullshit cash grab Mario collection that does things very poorly. I talked about how the Castlevania collection on the Switch is very feature barren. How there's not a lot to it, but at least it does everything right. At least it controls properly with no lag.
Yeah.
It at least preserves the game's aspect ratios and controls. And everything there plays like it should. It at least does that. And this is from Konami, the laziest publisher that was once something.
Mm-hmm.
And for 3D All-Stars to not even do that is a big fuck you to people who wanted to play these games on modern hardware.
It is.
And yeah, Square has always done this. They love the smell of their own farts. They think they're worth more than other devs.
Speaking of everything you just said, I gotta go back to Fallout 76 for a moment. It's time. It's time for Bethesda.
What game accidentally got imported in a PlayStation? Did a Fall Guys match suddenly erupt in the middle of the game because the code is so unoptimized? You could run an arbitrary code to program another game in a game, and every player of this MMO suddenly has to play another game they don't even have on their system?
That would be awesome if that suddenly appeared in Fallout 76.
Would it be awesome, Dave?
Yes, it would.
Would it be awesome?
Yes.
Correct.
Now...
What now?
I'd almost say these days that Fallout 76 is playable.
You know what I would say about this game that's been out for a year and a half or whatever? I'd say we're almost at the point where I could be not ashamed to admit I played the game.
Oh, no. I'm ashamed I admit I played this game.
I think the best part about Fallout 76 is that it's almost playable.
Now...
What praise from Dave.
Hey, I'm going to give it what I can give it. I mean, I felt the same way about Destiny 2 before I finally quit. And in fact, Destiny itself was, for me, was always a mindless go in and train my thumb to headshot simulator. So I find that sometimes I need a game that I can just turn my brain off and go and blow shit up.
Sure, no, I appreciate that.
Doom does not fall into that category, believe it or not,
because too intense.
Because Doom, either Eternal or 2016, actually means I have to think about what I'm doing and actually takes some effort. So it's not a turn off my brain to play game.
No, console Diablo games were that for me. I would have podcasts on, I would have the game muted, and I would just collect stuff.
Destiny was my game for that for a long time. Destiny 2 took it over, and Fallout 76 falls into that for me these days. Mm-hmm. Anyway, excuses aside about why I still play the game. Bethesda has actually put in a bunch of work and has managed to bring the game almost up to what they promised us in the beginning. There's no way to fix the broken engine. I mean, you're basically asking for an act of God for that. I mean, Bethesda's engine has been old for over a decade now. Having NPCs back in the world and actually having them in the world definitely has increased the aesthetic of it. I mean, you no longer feel like you're going through a soulless void. They've added in events you'll run into just randomly. Like, a couple days ago, I'm going down the road, and all of a sudden, this hovering robot walks by, playing the American anthem, and all of these rats are just falling like a Pied Piper. Nothing I had to do. I could have blown them up or anything else. I just kind of sat there. I'm like, neat. Stuff like that they've added in. So, I mean, they put in some effort. But it's always the lazy effort of Bethesda.
Okay.
So, with the next major patch, which is going to add in a major event and some stuff going on, of course they had to fuck it up by adding in a whole bunch of new microtransactions.
Okay.
Like, we've already got microtransactions in the game for buying the items, the store currency to buy cosmetics and things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, their store, everything was never supposed to go beyond cosmetics.
Okay.
Then they fucked that up by adding in repair packs for your items and stuff like that.
Okay.
That were only available through the store are now through their game board stuff.
Okay.
Then they started adding in items into the store that gave you little advantages. Things like equipment that you would have your character use for 30 seconds. It would give you stat buffs.
Oh boy.
Or one of the more recent ones they added in was a cooler that if you put food into it, it would last 50% longer. things of that nature. In fact, they added in a scrap bot that would just walk around your base and find free scrap for you for building stuff and everything else. They've been going in that direction more and more, where it actually has advantages over other people. Now, granted, I don't know how much that works in the PvP part of stuff, because I don't play the PvP Nuclear Winter Jack-Off Edition at all. I don't touch that junk. I can't because I use mods. Even a simple mod like fixing the user interface has to be disabled to play the Nuclear Winter stuff, so I can't do it. But now they're adding in more microtransactions. It seems like they're going hardcore on the pay-to-win stuff, even for the regular game. In that you'll get better gear, you'll get etc. So it seems like with Bethesda, every time they start getting things working, it fucks up. I'm hoping Microsoft, having bought out and now owning Bethesda and all the studios, that we'll see less of this. That maybe Microsoft can, kind of force them to actually have a quality assurance group and try and cut this shit out based on the negative press. But this is all still... That purchase doesn't actually get finalized until middle of next year, at the earliest. So all of this is still very much Bethesda. Microsoft may be able to say, well, we technically own you now, we want you to do this, but Bethesda doesn't actually technically have to listen yet, other than it would be smart to, because they are going to own your ass in half a year. But Fallout 76, just fuck.
Just fuck.
And speaking of fucked, and I hope we can find something else to talk about as a topic after this, because I don't want to end on a downer.
Okay.
I love CD Projekt games.
Oh, boy. Well, we still have to talk about Metroidvania.
Okay, that will be where we'll end then. Good.
Do I have who the Mind Seas developer is there?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because we should talk about Metroidvanias, period, because there's other ones I'd like to talk about.
CD Projekt
So,
Red.
I love CD Projekt Red games. Yeah. I do. Witcher 3 was fantastic.
Geralt is a very attractive man.
Sure. But this developer promised us not too long ago that they were going to finish their game without crunch. And now that they have decided that they're going to finalize, a kind of release date for the game, they are now doing mandatory, and in their mind makes this all okay, is it's mandatory paid crunch time. But it's still mandatory crunch time for the next month or two.
Yeah, fuck him. Jim Sterling had a video about this, how it's really hypocritical that it's okay to shit on EA and Activision when they pull shit like this, but the moment it's a company people like, people get up in arms. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't fucking shit on CD Projekt Red, they're one of the good ones. You can't shit on Nintendo's anti-consumer policies, they're Nintendo. No, man.
Yeah.
All corporations are the enemy, and fucking CD Projekt Red pulling this shit is unsurprising and still disappointing. They promised they wouldn't. And I also naively believed that. And now they're going to do that to their developers. They're going to put out all these words about how, no, our developers have bought into this. They understand the need for this. And we're already seeing reports that that's a lie. So, I mean...
they should just delay it another few months.
Just delay it. Fucking Blizzard can delay Shadowlands. CD Projekt Red can delay fucking... Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
It's, crunch is a failure of management. Anytime crunch is happening, a manager has failed.
Yeah.
It should never happen. It should be illegal. I think there should be legislation against this. But that would involve governments having some form of courage. And especially when people can just locate their development houses to places where it's legal to do this shit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a good look for CD Projekt Red.
No. This really disappointed me because, it's crunch. And they were one of the ones who stood up against it. But the moment, the chips are down and they want to have it out by a certain time, Now it's got to have crunch time because we got to get this out by a certain date. You almost think they had a publisher to like, the excuse would normally be, oh, well, their publisher said they have to have it out by a certain date. They are the publisher. So there is no reason they just can't put it off by another few months, except there's money involved.
This is why I think there needs to be legislation. I don't think a publisher should be able to do that to a developer, even if they are the same company, right?
Yeah.
Like, look, I've worked in software development, and I've been through crunch, not as a software developer, as a documentation guy. And even as a documentation guy, it's demoralizing and depressing when you have to do all this overtime to get shit done. And I couldn't even imagine how hard it is for the people developing the fucking code and needing to also test it and also needing to make sure it can ship. It's, I get that there's a fine balance between working on something forever and cutting features and just getting it out the door. I get that. So many video games on Matt McMuscle's What Happened are there because they couldn't ship. But there's the other extreme is crunch. And it should never happen. It's abhorrent that the game industry is still going through this. Absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah.
Crunch is an aberration. It is not the way of things. It should not be anyway.
I totally agree.
Let's end on a high note about some Metroidvanias we've been playing. Yeah?
Sounds good. Now,
I actually finally got my hands on my free Xbox Game Pass version of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night on PC. I've extensively played Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and Curse of the Moon 2, and I love both of those games. So when I played Ritual of the Night, I thought, well, I don't know if this is going to do it for me. Symphony of the Night is a game I love, but I've talked about that. I think it's a little overrated. And if this game's anything like it, I don't know if this is going to do it for me, especially after Curse of the Moon.
I pushed you to play this game. You've always been like, no, it's not going to be as good as my 2D games, blah, 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 blah.
It is a 2D game, though.
Kind of.
Well, I get what you're saying.
It is in the same vein as Guilty Gear Xrd is a 2D game.
Sure. But I played it, and yeah, no, it's fun. Every Bloodstained game has the same characters, and they do different things with the story. And there's no connecting thread, really. So the version of characters in this game I don't like as much as the version of characters in Curse of the Moon 2. But when I put that aside, the game still plays great. There's a bunch of weapon types. They give you like one of each in the very first area, so you can experiment with them. There's fun special moves you can do. I used one to kind of sequence break and get a pirate hat early.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the Xbox Game Pass version, do they give you the DLC?
Now, I got the Windows Game Pass version, so I have no idea if Zangetsu mode and all that shit is there.
Well, Zangetsu and stuff like that, I believe, would be there. The reason why I'm asking is when the game came out, I think it's still like this on Game Pass, there were certain weapons that were originally Kickstarter only.
Oh, okay.
That they then released a DLC for like $3 or something.
Okay.
That gave you the extra 3 weapons, including a whip that was very much Belmont whip.
Yeah, I got a whip in the first area.
There's a whip already in the game, but there's another one specifically for the Kickstarter, and a couple other weapons that you needed to buy the DLC. I never did.
Gotcha. The weapons I got in the first area were a dagger, the Kung Fu shoes, which I pretty much used exclusively, especially since I could sequence break with them, and because Miriam's fucking hot and I like watching her kick high. The whip, which she does not use like she does in Curse of the Moon. In the Curse of the Moon games, she uses it like a Belmont. Here, she kind of does a backhanded whip that aims down. A sword, a great sword, and a musket with a bunch of rounds. Those are the weapons I got in the first area.
And there's plenty more weapons in the game.
Oh, no, I realize. But no, I had fun going through it. I found secret areas. I found treasures, one of which, again, I wasn't supposed to get. I beat the first boss, which is also a boss in Curse of the Moon 2. In fact, that whole level, that ship was a level in Curse of the Moon 1, so it's nice seeing that. The save room is a boss in Curse of the Moon 2. I saw the story with Jeeble. He's a villain here. He's actually a hero in the Curse of the Moon games, but he's a villain here. No, I had a lot of fun with it. I think it controls super well. I think attacking and backdashing work well. I like that you can hold up and Miriam strikes a sexy pose, and I'm like, sweet, I'm a horny guy. I like the sexy pose. It plays fine on my machine with all the settings dialed up, so no, fun game. I'm looking forward to continuing to play it and then to playing it through again on hard with the randomizer turned on. I think I'll have a lot of fun with it. I hope that the hard mode does what the DS Castlevanias did in hard mode and let you put a level cap. I like to play them with a level cap lower than the max. It definitely makes the end game a lot harder. I would usually pick 25, but those games let you level cap it to 1 if you were really crazy. The other Metroidvania that I played was one I've been following for a while, but I only actually played recently, and that's Mind Seas, which is... It's 2D, it's impeccably animated, it's an indie game by... What's the name of the developer, Dave? You wrote it down for me. It's Kamina something.
Well, it's Kamina, you said.
Kamina
Dimension.
Kamina Dimension. They developed it. They published that in Steam, and some other developer or publisher published it on Switch. I was playing this on Switch. I have the Steam version because I think I kickstarted it. I don't remember. I either bought it or I kickstarted it. I can't recall. My memory is fading fast. Who are we talking about? Right, Mind Seas. In Mind Seas, you play a guy who looks a lot like Patrick Boyven of currently Castle Super Beast and formerly the best friend Zaibatsu. Mm-hmm. He's in a robot body because he's trying to get his daughter's mind back. His daughter's mind was stolen by an evil organization that he is now pursuing. This one is a lot more like Super Metroid in that you go down to planets, you have to find secret walls to get through them, you have gun weapons, a lot of collectibles. There is a melee attack that I actually used as my main attack, but despite having that, it still feels much more like Super Metroid than Symphony of the Night. Mm-hmm. It's very atmospheric. It's very cool. And I would actually recommend that one as well. It's gotten a ton of great reception online. It had a Steam release and recently got a Switch release. Mind Seas. Very fun game. So those are 2 Metroidvanias I've been working through recently that I recommend highly. And it's kind of rekindled my love of Metroidvanias a little bit, because I have always loved the genre, but I haven't really played one in a little while.
Oh boy, and that's something that it seems like every other month I'm playing through a new one that I find.
They're a pretty flexible genre to do, right? A lot of different plots and stories and gameplay types, like the upcoming Gestalt of Steam and Cinder is a Metroidvania I am really looking forward to.
My most recent one that I've been playing is a game called Blasphemous.
Uh-huh.
It is, again, a Metroidvania style. Think of what would happen if a Metroidvania met Dark Souls.
Okay.
It is quite brutal. If you don't get back to your body, you have a health bar, as you normally do. But you also have for lack of a better term, an MP bar.
Okay.
Or an ability bar. And it builds as you defeat things.
I think the accepted term is mana.
Well, no, it's not magic. It's an actual...
No, I realize. I mean, just generally, when someone says out of mana, they mean that they're out of whatever resource they need to do a thing.
Now I'm thinking about it, is called the ability bar because it builds as you kill things to build it. But,
so it's more like a super bar.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the way this game does the ability bar is... Or super bar.
Whatever.
Is that it starts being blocked into 2. And as you go through the game, and you can actually segment it more into 3 and 4 and 5. Because if you die, when you're going back to your body, part of it will basically overgrow with ivy. And now you can no longer fill that second bar. It stops. So you can't actually get off 2 supers kind of thing. And if you die more and more and not go back to your corpse, you will literally lose the ability to use your super bar completely.
Is this a 2D game or a 3D
2D.
One? Okay.
And, I mean, the lore goes around that a person basically met God at some point and created a miracle that, for lack of a better term, fucked over the planet. Mm-hmm. And you are all of a sudden hit with everybody gets hit with the miracle in a different way. In your case, your miracle is that you can stop this. You can end this miracle from having, depending how you read it, ever having happened, or you can just stop it.
So this is like a daylight horror kind of thing, which you don't see a lot of, the daylight horror kind of subgenre of horrific things in bright daylight, so you can see all the terribleness.
Oh, I mean, it is... This game is fucked up. I'm not going to argue that. I mean, the enemies you're fighting, everything else, most of them are... There's not a single standard enemy, other than, occasionally you might have to fight a bird enemy kind of thing. But otherwise, the enemies are kind of like, what the It's almost like the devs behind Not Alone in the Dark, Silent Hill, then decide, let's kind of ramp this up to 11, and you get a Metroidvania from that, because you're going through the countryside, and you're going through churches and catacombs and castles, and on top of that, like, you're getting items that your inventory screen is like a list of like 7 different pages, because you've got one area you can basically put together this rosary that has different things slotted into it that both give you a power up but also take something away. So like for instance, you've got a counter in this game. So you can counter most things if you get the timing right. But one of the items I've got is that if I whiff it, I'm actually open for a moment longer than you're supposed to be. So you can get your ass kicked pretty damn quick. Things of that nature. Like, you got the rosary, you've got a one that goes around your wrist that has another one. You've got your super ones. You can have one powered up over others, but you can only change those in churches. And everything, and I mean fucking everything, has a story. Even an item that you pick up to give to somebody else, you look at the actual story behind it, and I have not read an upbeat story yet within this game.
So definitely like a Dark Souls idea.
It's very...
So much dark and kind of weird meandering lore that doesn't necessarily make sense but fits in.
And yet, I think I've gotten more lore and more background story that the game has actually been able to tell me in this game than Dark Souls has ever given me in one of their games. So it's just so weird, because I come across in this church, I battle through this whole area, and I get to this hallway, and there's a person who's basically been alive and having their back flayed by a cat of nines for the past 500 years, because by her suffering, others don't. And I'm like, okay, I'm coming back and ending this here soon. And they even give you the option, like, do you stop this now? I have no doubt I'm playing through this game at least 3 times, because I have no doubt through stuff I've already done, I'm not going to get the best ending. I'm pretty sure I'm leading to the dark ending kind of thing. Because there was before the first number of bosses to get into this cathedral door would not open. And it's like, you gotta defeat these 3 bosses. And you feel sorry for these 3 bosses that you have to defeat, because they're not bad people. They're just in bad situations kind of thing. But there's this woman who shows up before each one and says, do you need my help? Well, I'm playing. You want to help me? Sure, why not? Well, after you defeat the first boss and she helps you, when you're under her the second time, she's older and coughing blood. Okay. After the 3rd time she helps you, I figured, okay, I've already screwed myself by having her help me once. I might as well go all in. At the end of the 3rd time with her helping you during the battle, she literally says that her job is done, turns to dust, and just dies. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen.
Oh, this looks like a pretty cool game. Developed by Spanish studio The Game Kitchen and published by Team 17.
Yeah.
They do Worms.
They do.
Oh man, Spanish horror. Oh, these guys are like the Spanish Inquisition too. You remember Pan's Labyrinth? Like...
Oh, dude, this makes the shit that happened in Pan's Labyrinth look like nothing. I mean, between the bosses and some of the stuff they do to you, like the first couple bosses, I was like, okay, that was standard. Okay, it was a weird goat tree demon. Okay, I'm fine with this. I killed the first boss, no problem. Granted, the first boss is in the first, 3 minutes of the game. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just learn the controls. You can't kill me. Ooh, you almost killed me. Okay, I managed to kill you. Great, we're good. Okay, no problem. Let's continue the game. The second screen, they kill me. It's like, fuck. But you're right. Being a...
Because those Spaniards, they got some fucked up minds. Listeners from Spain, make sure you confirm that.
You know what you did. But yeah, so that's the most recent one I played. One Metroidvania I'd like to... that I finished a long time ago, but I like to actually mention here, is Time Spinners.
Oh, yeah, Time Spinners. I haven't played this one, but I did see a video of it being played through, including its true ending.
Yes.
Which mentally broke me for a little while. It's kind of sad.
If the good ending broke you? Oh, no, fuck. Do not see a couple of those other endings.
No, I've seen a bunch of the other endings are better. The true ending is really depressing.
Ish.
Because spoiler alert, she has to become the Maiden of Time, but she doesn't want to be the Maiden of Time. She wants to live normally.
Yeah. Anyway, this was a fantastic Metroidvania. As you went through the game, you could actually you would go between different time periods and could actually affect the future and the present in certain ways. Mm. And you had some choices in how you did certain things, so you end up with the different endings. Mm-hmm. And it was quite fun to play through multiple times. I really enjoyed this game. Well worth the $10 that it's worth these days. If you see it, it may even be even cheaper with the fall sale coming up. Definitely worth playing. I've got an entire list of 30 or 40 Metroidvanias in my library. Everything from Destin Elysian Tale to the Ori games.
To Hollow Knight.
To Hollow Knight, yes. Which I'm looking greatly forward towards the next title on that one. That is definitely one of those ones where it'll be out when it's finished, and I appreciate that from that studio. Even down to Rogue Legacy, which now has a part 2. The Shantae games.
Yeah, they count.
Oh, they absolutely count.
I think they're more of the Wonder Boy type of Metroidvania, but even Wonder Boy is Metroidvania.
And that one depends on which title. The further that we've gone into the Shantae games, they become more and more Metroidvanias.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, now, and this comes down to them kind of messing around a little bit, but the Half Genie Hero was definitely more of a Wonder Boy. Absolutely. Whereas the previous game to that, The Pirate's Curse, that was a Metroidvania. They've gone back to being more of the Metroidvania and the Seven Sirens. I love the studio, but I think they need to reevaluate a few of their things when it comes to the Shantae series. They're a little bit... Half Genie Hero had fantastic level design, but wasn't as much of a Metroidvania. You could go back to levels and go through them a la Wonder Boy. Whereas Pirate's Curse, the levels were still fantastically done, and it was a Metroidvania, but that game released originally on iPhone, and then eventually came to Steam. Was a fantastically done game. Seven Sirens didn't have so much of the good level design. It's still very much Metroidvania, but it's more of a... almost like they put all the different screen types on the wall and started throwing darts at them for how they were going to build it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't flow as well as their other games. They also changed things up a little bit, so I don't know if this was as successful to them as the last game.
It's tough to keep things fresh. Sometimes a genre changes in order, at least for a game or two.
Yeah, I'm not giving it a 5 out of 10 like a number of reviewers did. It's still a solid 7 or 8 out of 10.
Oh, God, out of 10 rating systems.
Yeah,
You do the 3 pi system. It's much better. Give me a 3 pi rating for this game.
It's about a 2.23 pi.
Okay. No, that's good.
2.23 to 2.25.
Yeah, no, I get that. I understand that number.
So stupid. But yeah, no, Metroidvanias are a fantastic genre that is probably never going to go away just for how much it's become part of the industry. I mean, granted, we haven't had a Metroid game in that style for a long time.
We'll see if Metroid Prime 4 ever comes out.
But Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a Metroid Prime game.
Metroid Prime 1 and 2 were both very Metroidvania, even 3.
Oh, yeah.
These are Metroidvanias. A Metroidvania can be in 3D.
Absolutely.
There are some Doom Metroidvanias.
It doesn't have to be a 2D game at all. It's why the genre is so diverse.
Yeah.
Touhou Luna Nights.
What is Touhou Luna? Oh, that's the one based off Touhou.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've heard of that. I've seen that one, actually.
It is a more difficult style game. Not as difficult as Blasphemous by any means of the imagination. Though the bosses, oh my god, the bullet hell bosses. And this is an actual Metroidvania. It's not a bullet hell shooter, but it's a Touhou game, so it's got to have bullet hell in it. I played through this 1 year at Frag, and I couldn't stop. It was so fun to go through. Even the storyline. I mean, Touhou doesn't have a standard storyline by any means of the imagination, but there's certain established character tropes for each one, so I understand them. And it was just fun to go through and, have certain characters doing their usual hijinks on each other. The patterns were neat. The mansion, which is like an infinity mansion, just had all these different enemy types, and the graphical style was neat. Any good Metroidvania having the double jump, when you get that, just opens everything up. Blasphemous does not have a double jump.
I don't know, man. Double jumps are important to me. I wish I could double jump in real life.
I get it, or if there is a double jump, I haven't unlocked it yet.
If I could double jump in real life, I could jump out of a plane and live.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a broken ability.
I'd break a few bones.
But yeah, I just wanted to mention that one because that hat was a fantastic one.
And you're murdered! Folks, thank you very much for listening to Two Fat Guys Talk, episode 124. Go to our website, twofatguystalk.com. You can also get there by going to animerave.xyz. It's also the home of Carl's Day of Anime Rave, an anime review show. Watch our stuff, comment on our stuff, listen to our stuff.
Tune in next time.